Forum. I invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, Mr. Binkley will take a roll call of our remote members to ensure they can hear and be heard. Mr. Balachandran.
Here.
Ms. Baring.
Here.
Ms. Engman.
Here.
Mr. Lipscomb.
Here.
Mr. Bernier.
Here.
Mr. Best.
Here.
Ms. Stilson.
Here.
Ms. Caldwell.
Here.
Ms. Giannini.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Ms. Hartle.
Here.
Mr. Strauss.
Good evening.
Mr. Lord.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Abrams. Ms. Robb
Here.
and Ms. Whitman.
Here.
Mr. Chair, good meeting back to you. Very good, thank you. And for those that did not hear, staff had a little excitement just prior to the meeting. Our general forum room wasn't cooperating and playing nicely. They ultimately overcame, but please, as always, provide our feedback to us on how, if we can improve. First item is public comments. Scott, any public comments submitted prior to the meeting?
Not prior, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Does anybody on or in the room wish to speak to the general forum about something that is not on this evening's agenda?
Good. Mr. Lloyd, putting us from Australia tonight.
This is Peter Marshall. I don't know anyone called my name, but I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
And so is Suta Magruder from Patton.
And Mr. Trevino, can you hear me as well?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I didn't hear you either.
Yes, Elliot, good call. Good to hear you. Okay, again, anyone have any public comments that is not on this evening's agenda? Seeing or hearing none, we continue on. First item is staff recognition, and this evening we would like to start with our friends in Ferguson Township and their chair, Laura Danini.
Thank you, Chair Frank, and thank you to the General Forum for allowing me a moment to recognize two individuals. Today is the last official day of Dave Probalka's service to Ferguson Township as our manager. He has led our township with wit and intelligence, and I know I speak for the entire community when I say we will miss him. Tomorrow is a new day with new opportunity and new leadership. At our last Ferguson board meeting, it was our extreme pleasure to appoint Centrise Martin as our interim manager. It is clear that Centrise is an exceptional leader and that Ferguson is fortunate to have her at the helm. It is likely that many of you already do know her and what an asset she is to local government, but as tonight she joins us, I wanted to take this opportunity to welcome her to General Forum. Centrise, if you wanted to say hello.
Hello, and thank you, Laura, for that introduction. I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you for the opportunity for a remark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, General Forum, and Centrise, of course.
Thank you, Dave, and we look forward to working with you, Centrise. Eric, you have staff recognitions for the COG.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We've received a couple of items of correspondence from outside the COG that I'd like to share with you. And then we have one other recognition to share. So first of all, nearly a year ago in April 2021, the Uniform Construction Code Review Advisory Council, or RAC, chaired by COG's own Walt Schneider, submitted their report to the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, recommending the adoption of the 2018 International Code Council family of codes. Those recommended codes were then sent to the Independent Regulatory Commission in accordance with state statutory requirements for review. And after that review, the uniform codes were recently put into effect here in 2022. In appreciation of Walt's leadership for the code review, we recently received a message from the Pennsylvania Secretary of Labor and Industry stating to Walt, congratulations and thank you on your hard work. Your dedication and perseverance are an asset to the safety of the Commonwealth's buildings and structures. We are lucky to have had you as chair of the RAC, and thank you very much. I think he's still chair. So thank you, Walt, for your contributions on that important project. Another recently received correspondence was from the family of a longtime former COG employee who contacted our HR officer, Becca Pettit, recently for assistance. A former colleague of ours had passed away, and the family needed help in the complexity of retiree life insurance. They sent a kind note thanking Becca for her assistance, noting, I want you to know how much I appreciate your prompt and courteous attention in this matter, and thank you for your kind words and support in helping us make this very sad adjustment. So again, thank you, Becca, for that assistance and always being available. Last but not least, I'd like to turn things over to SCLO Library Director Lisa Collins to share some information about a recently completed project and the salute to Ben Drain for his leadership on the project. Take it away, Lisa.
Can everybody hear me okay? And most importantly, I'm just double checking that Ben is here as well. And yes, I see him. Fantastic. Wonderful. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge the work of Ben Drain. He is head of patron services at SCLO Center Region Library, and he spearheaded the installation of the grab and go library material pickup lockers in Half Moon Township. It was started at the end of January, and this project offers Half Moon Township residents a convenient way to get books and materials. By piloting this low-tech solution, we are learning how to scale and how to budget this service for possible future expansion into other municipalities. Just want to show you a couple of pictures. How does it work? Half Moon Township residents sign up for the service at sclolibrary.org/lockers. And you can see here a picture of the lockers and how Ben created a base and a top for patrons to sit their items. Additional locker units have been purchased so that it can be easily expanded as needed, and items are delivered weekly. So this service is not as fast or as robust as visiting the library in person. However, it does offer an option for those individuals that have transportation or time limitations. After a patron signs up, Ben put together this really easy process. We gather all of their reserves that they've made electronically or via phone to us. We check them out to them. We transport the materials to a locker at Way Fruit Farm, lock it with a padlock, again, low tech. Email the patron the locker number and the combination, and then they're able to retrieve their items. It is that easy, or at least Ben makes it look easy. I have to say that there was a tremendous amount of behind the scenes work that Ben did with his team in order to make this happen. And I wanted to thank him publicly and share this really wonderful new initiative with everyone here tonight. So thank you, Ben, and thank you very much to all the patron services team members at SCLO that make this pilot project happen.
Thank you. It's definitely been a team effort, and I appreciate the recognition.
Thank you all.
Walt, Becca, Schlo, and Ben, thank you for making COG what it is. Pam?
Oh, I just had one question on how many units are there? I'm counting 9.
Yes, you're exactly right. There are 9 units. The beautiful thing about how Ben designed this and made the purchasing decisions for it is that we can buy these individual little locker boxes and we can expand. So we're starting with 9 and then it can be expanded up or to the side in order to handle if we have like a sustained usage. So very much customizable.
Thank
Ben,
you.
did I get that right, Ben? Anything that you would add to that?
That's correct. And we have some units standing by in case there is a surge.
Good, Pam?
Thank you both.
Thank you. Laura?
Thanks. I just wanted to say I really like this addition to our agenda, and thanks to all of staff for everything you're doing. And Lisa, I wanted to say specifically, this is a really interesting and innovative idea. And of course, I'm thinking of Western Ferguson Township, and just really happy to be working with you. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. We're looking at that end of the area as well. So in fact, Mr. Probolka had been really supportive of us exploring this idea. So we're excited to work with Centrise.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you again. Continuing on, does any members of the general forum have an agenda item to add to this evening's agenda? Seeing nor hearing none, we're going to continue on the consent agenda. I'm sorry.
Ms. Rob had her hand up briefly.
No, it just didn't go down.
All right, Pam, thank you. Again, the consent agenda for this evening consists of the approval of the minutes from our January 24th, 2022 general forum meeting, the approval or reappointments to the Code Board of Appeals of Brian Solnowski and Alan Popovich, a recommendation for the disposal of tanker 5-2, and that is it for this evening. Any motion to approve those, sir? Okay, any of those wish to be pulled? I will accept Mr. Haymeister's motion. Do we have a second?
Second by Laura.
Take your pick, Scott. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the lease of 2901 Stewart Drive. Before we get started, I'm going to give you the method to the madness. Staff is going to make a short presentation. Mr. Baer will speak to the lease itself. Mr. Vigilone will speak to the financial elements of it. And then Mr. Binkley will speak to the unit vote procedures and stuff. At the conclusion of those, I will ask for any questions to staff, not comments, just questions, clarifications, and everything like that. Once we've completed that, we'll go to the motion and second and ask for comments to include any public comments. Following those, we will recess to our unit votes, have our discussions, and reconvene when complete. I'll call the question. Mr. Binkley will roll call the results. We will then move to the second item, which is the amendment. The lease is the first item. The budget amendment is the second item. Similar process, but in that we don't need to go to a unit vote. We just need a voice majority for that item. Any questions on the process? All right. Steve on with us? Great. Steve, at this point, it's been seen by public safety, finance, exec, and we gave the general forum a heads up that it was coming. So do what you need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this has been a work in process for several months, as you've heard. The ultimate plan is to look at a number of long-term options to improve space and space utilization. This is part and parcel of an ongoing facilities assessment conducted under the auspices of the Facilities Committee through the COG Facilities Coordinator. So it was felt that a good short-term option, something or short and near term, would be to lease space while we prosecute other longer-term opportunities and avenues. And so this lease availed itself from a landlord with whom COG has a very positive relationship. The space is more than adequate for our needs. We do not need to make significant leasehold improvements anywhere in this building. And it is reasonably proximate to fire stations so that if we have people who are performing tasks at this particular location, they can still respond, in this case, to the College Township Station in a timely manner. So what we're asking is to move ahead and have the opportunity to declutter, decompress fire stations, making room for people by moving some stuff that needs to be readily at hand, but not immediately in the stations themselves, in order to effect response and use by entering into this lease. This lease is the same lease that Center Region Parks and Rec currently enjoys for their property, which is in the same complex. And we are basically a 2-year minimum, a 5-year lease with 2 years of minimum commitment, and then renewals as we see fit moving forward. In the meantime, staff will continue to look at a series of long-term proposals to bring back to public safety, facilities, and finance for their consideration moving forward.
Thank you, Steve. Joe Vigilone, could you speak to the financial elements, please?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay. On the financial elements, we are asking for a budget amendment in the amount of $42,000 for the fire operating budget. Going into the end of 2021, I have just closed the books and given them to the auditors, and we are projecting an ending fund balance of about $85,000 higher than what we had anticipated it back at the end of the summer, being at the end of the year. So it is our recommendation to utilize some of that fund balance to offset the cost of, offset the cost of the rent for 2022.
Great, thanks, Joe. Okay, Scott, please speak to us about the unit vote process.
Sure. If you are attending remotely this evening, please remain logged in to the Zoom meeting and mute yourself during the process. If you're attending in person in the general forum room, to help ensure that units can effectively communicate, we ask that individual units physically separate throughout either the general forum room, lobby, second floor space of the COG building. We ask that non-voting units be respectful of these discussions. A quorum of each governing body must be present in order to have a unit discussion, which we have this evening. Non-participants in the unit discussions this evening will be Half Moon Township and Harris Township. We'll entertain public comment at some portion. Once the meeting is recessed by the chair, I will stop the recording as well as stop taking minutes. Individual votes are not recorded. If a request for an individual vote record is made by a general forum member before recessing for the unit vote, the municipalities will provide individual votes to the recording secretary for inclusion in the meeting minutes. Each board or council president will manage the unit discussions with the assistance of their municipal manager. Municipal managers will indicate to the executive director once unit voting is complete, and the chair will then reconvene the general forum meeting and call upon me to record the unit vote. Should multiple unit votes be requested, the same procedure will be repeated, and members of the public online and in the room are able to observe these unit discussions by calling into the phone numbers that will appear once we are ready. Very good. Questions for staff? Elliot, do you have your hand up? You're behind the recorder for me.
Yes, I wanted to move the motion and ask for a unit vote.
Okay, thank you. Again, questions for staff? Any Questions for staff? If not, we will accept Mr. Abrams' motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second. It's Laura.
Mr. Dini seconds. At this point, I'm opening the floor for comments from general forum members and or the public. Seeing nor hearing any, at this point, we will recess to the unit votes of each municipality. Harris, have fun.
Recording stopped.
Have fun.
Can you hear me, Pam?
Sorry,
My
I'm here.
condolences. Dan's there.
Screen though. Okay, can everybody hear me?
I can.
The host muted you. Okay.
Are we waiting for Doug or what? Can everybody hear me?
We haven't heard from the other municipalities yet, so just need that confirmation.
Hello? Pam?
That,
Ferguson?
Almost done.
Almost done.
Hi, we're
Almost
not
done.
back yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're good. You're good. At this point, I'll call the question, and Mr. Binkley will, by municipality, roll call.
State College Borough,
Yes.
College Township,
Yes.
Ferguson Township,
Yes.
Half Moon Township,
Abstain.
Harris Township,
Abstain.
Patton Township.
Yes.
4 votes yes, 2 abstentions.
Very good. The second item, we'll move on to the next item, which is the budget amendment.
Recording in progress.
We'll move on to
I just, they record, you want to review the
Yes. To confirm hold on, the results of the unit vote, were 4-0 with 2 abstentions. So the motion passed. We now move on to our second item, which is with regard to the budget amendment. I would accept the motion. Elliot, are you making that motion?
Yes, so moved, and I call for a unit vote.
You would like a unit vote on this?
If it's needed.
This can be a majority. This can just be a majority voice vote.
Then I rescind the request for a unit vote.
Okay, very good. Very good. So
I second Elliot's motion minus the
Thank
unit vote.
Thank you.
Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, any comments from members of the general forum or the public at this point? If none, we will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, can you let the record show that Half Moon abstained?
Thank you, Half Moon. Thank you, Harris. Very good. Thank you for surviving that unit vote. If you didn't gather, it's a hell of a lot easier if you're all sitting in the same room. But we survived. Continuing on in the agenda, we have a year-end 2021 fire report. Mr. Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd just like to take this quick opportunity to thank you all for your support on the lease. And I would be remiss, in the Finance Committee, I had the chance to explain how we ended up with such a large surplus. I don't want people to think that we budget in a manner that creates surpluses. We work hard not to do that. We had a particularly fortunate year last year with the trades people who are members of the Alpha Fire Company, and they freely gave a tremendous amount of their time. I'm talking about licensed electricians, licensed HVAC technicians, and licensed plumbers, and they have saved the taxpayers a significant amount of money, and that is the bulk of that excess amount. So thank you very much for your support. I just wanted to be clear where that came from. I don't want anybody to think we're up to anything with the smoke and mirrors on the budget numbers. I draw your attention every year. As you know, I roll up a year-end report, and I with the participation of the Boalsburg Fire Company in Harris Township and the participation of the Port Matilda Fire Company in Half Moon Township to give us complete figures for the whole of the region, although the bulk of the report is obviously geared to the Regional Fire Protection Program, which is Alpha Fire Company. That report was included in the agenda package. It's also the link for the report appears in the agenda, and it's on the COG website for anyone to see. I'll draw your attention, rather than walk through the whole report, I'm going to draw your attention to 2 things that are just a little different. The first is I apologize. I realized in preparing for this meeting, I failed to put page numbers on the report this year, and it's in presentation format, so that was not very bright. But if you assume that the cover page is page 1 and you go back to page 10, you will get to something that looks like this. using the wonders of camera technology there. That is the performance against our performance, our response goals in the region. The outcome is exceedingly favorable, but I would draw your attention to a limitation in this data collection, and you'll notice two of the dashboard boxes are highlighted in yellow. So we operate using a standard reporting system into the national and state database, and that database today does not readily differentiate between a non-emergency incident and an emergency incident. We have a goal for our emergency incidents to be 10 minutes or less within the growth boundary area and 15 minutes or less elsewhere in the region. So what happens is when I review this on a quarterly basis, I flag everything that was more than 10 minutes pull that out to see whether that was a bona fide emergency call or not. The only way for me to do that is to actually read the individual narratives of the reports. It's very time consuming. As a result, I only look at the things that are over 10 minutes. So if you go to, for example, the second quarter or the third quarter report, you'll see there's 9 of those and 6 of those in those respective quarters. So what happens is in the third quarter, 3 of the 6 were slightly over 15 minutes. And so that's a 50% response against an 80% goal. But the data is skewed very unfavorably to the fire department in that all non-emergency calls are not included. It's really that subset today. So we're working on getting that fixed with the folks that set this database up to try to give a more realistic view. But even with that unfavorable skew, our numbers look really good. I'm very, very proud of the responses that the men and women of the fire department are providing the community. The other thing I would draw your attention to is on the very next page in the narrative section. I just wanted to point out that I had access to data this year and hope to have continued access in the future of county and state fire experience that we can use to compare to our region. You'll see our region compares favorably. I think this is clearly the result of an excellent fire department and having good codes. So we should all feel very, very good about where we are positioned relative to the fire experiences elsewhere in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and certainly the rest of the country. So with that, I encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to look at the report, please do. And as always, if you have any questions on this report, you are absolutely invited to email me, and I will gladly answer any question of any kind relative to the fire department, its performance, or this report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. I think it's also appropriate that we ask the chair of our Public Safety Committee if he has anything to add to the report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, just, I want to acknowledge that we have the pleasure of, on a monthly basis, getting updates on the great work that's being done day in and day out by the team to serve and protect our community. So, Steve, thank you very much for on behalf of the entire COG and the entire community for all the work that you and the entire team do. It makes a huge difference for us, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I will pass that along to the troops tomorrow night at the company meeting. Thank you.
Even better. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Steve or Public Safety? Mr. Best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bear, for that presentation. I did just want to clarify, I had a question on the slide you were referring to, which was page 10. It appears as if some of those metrics that are highlighted yellow are actually green. Is that correct? Where, just for example, Q1 of 2021, non-emergency incidents, the goal was 80%, but you have an actual of 100%?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. That is correct, and that data is accurate.
Okay.
I left them highlighted yellow because they're all asterisked accordingly, and I just left it as a standard template to draw attention to that as being odd when you look at the population. So the population, if you're looking at this, statistically, you'd say, wow, that's a really odd population. You really only went to 9 non-emergency calls in a quarter. So I just kept it highlighted for that purpose.
Well, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Any other questions for Steve or Public Safety? Very good. As always, thank you, Steve. Continuing on, reaffirming the Center Region's shared values of mutual respect, equity, and inclusivity, and reaffirming the Center Region as a welcoming community to people from all cultures, religious beliefs, and ethnicity. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated in the agenda item title, it is one of our shared priorities for the Center Region to be a welcoming place for everyone. In recent years, the General Forum has adopted 3 resolutions announcing hate and bias in our community. And in 2021, the General Forum issued a joint statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. For reference, you can find these resolutions and statements on our website at crcog.net/resolutions. Recently, the community group Campus and Community in Unity, a local group that is promoting multicultural community efforts to respect and celebrate diversity, and has been working together on a number of community issues, has created and is distributing a flyer that helps describe how to report hate and bias incidents in Center County. This would enable anyone who witnesses or experiences incidents to report it either as it's happening or after the fact to get it to the right organization so the data can be tracked as well as followed up on. This flyer was developed with the help of all 3 police chiefs in the Center region. And the committee is looking at making a few adjustments in terms of making sure the phone numbers for contacting the right agencies are clear on the form. And I was just contacted by CCU this afternoon to follow up on a couple of those questions. But we really appreciate the effort that CCU has made to make sure that bias and hate incidents can be reported. And we have posted these flyers in COG facilities, and we'll post the updated ones once the numbers have been made more clear if they need to be adopted or adapted. The executive committee discussed this last week and wanted to share this and make this an opportunity for discussion with the General Forum. And if there is interest, there is a motion in the packet in order to reaffirm our shared values and the resolutions that were adopted previously and support the flyer. So, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Go in the room first. Anybody in the room? No, good. Anybody remote? Questions or comments? There's some more on. Mr. Lord.
Hello.
Hello.
I have to admit that I groaned when I first saw this appear on the agenda. Once I feel like I'm being presented with Hobson's choice. I either vote saying that I'm in favor of bias, hatred, etc., which I'm not going to do, or I vote to support a resolution that we've passed 3 times and things haven't changed. If we're going to pass this kind of resolution, I think we ought to just put it on in the beginning of each year and make it part of our standard opening set of resolutions. That being said, I heartily do approve of the flyer we're sending out because that is a positive step. And so I'm pleased to see that that was included, and that has my wholehearted support. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. The only thing I would say is this is our second meeting. My second one. I still consider it the beginning of the year. I'm not ready to be moving too fast for it. And just to confirm, this is an reaffirmation of not a new resolution, any new resolutions, just affirming what we've already said before. So to your point. Laura.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still in favor of this as I was in executive, but my question still remains about the flyer, and I wanted everybody in General Forum to be aware of it because I have a concern about it being distributed and us picking it up and running with it and expenditures based on that if it's not completely correct yet. And so what was identified, and I'm not sure if Mr. Nornberg was referring to this correction, but if you look at the flyer, you'll see that Ferguson Township and Patton Township are missing, like there's no phone number. So my question was, isn't that number valid for all the townships? I think it is, but anyway, I would like it to be distributed with our Ferguson name on it. So, because people can call our police and people who live in Ferguson can know that this relates to them. So can people not distribute it until we get the updated flyer? And is that the updated flyer, Mr. Norenberg, that you were talking about? Thanks.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is not our flyer, but I do believe Eric has had some conversations with.
Correct. CCU indicated that they're trying to clarify and we'll list the townships as you indicated, Laura, and we're also wanting to make sure that the numbers were correct. I believe the toll-free number that's shown there for Center Region COG is the non-emergency number for Center County Dispatch. That will get it to the right agency, with the exception of state police for Half Moon Township. So these are a couple of the things we're trying to clarify and make sure that anyone in the Center Region can find the right number and identify the right number to call for their community. So we are working on that, Laura.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Janet Engman, please.
Yes, I was just scanning through the resolutions again, and is it mentioned anywhere, gender identity?
I would have to go back and review.
I don't think it is, and that's why I'm asking.
Sure. Well, that might be something that you want to discuss in the borough and see if that's something that they want to bring forward to the general forum. Mr. Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just briefly like to speak to the sentiment that was just expressed that we shouldn't be reaffirming the matters or this resolution regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just want to say that even if I get the point that we have things to do in other matters, but I mean, I'll just say it this way. In a nutshell, if I had my way, we would be reaffirming this resolution for diversity, equity, and inclusion at every meeting until we actually have true equity and inclusion throughout America. I just have to say, it's not a good look to be speaking as in let's minimize this, because it's not something that should be minimized, and it really needs to be addressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss. Any other questions or comments? As a follow-up to Mr. Strauss's thought, my background has always said that I believe in the culture of an organization. And the sure way to establish culture is to talk about what you stand for as often as you can. So to Mr. Lord's point, I sincerely do hope that this becomes a standard item on the reorg every year, or as soon as possible thereafter, as we did here. This is not something that has been done in the past, but I do think it is important that we stand behind who we said we are. So with that said, staff has provided a motion that the general forum, as recommended by the executive committee, reaffirm resolutions 2017-1, 2020-5, and 2021-3, once again declaring that hate, discrimination, and bias have no place in our Center Region community, and that General Forum reaffirms the united commitment to stand together against acts of bias and hate anywhere in our Center Region community, urges distribution of the hate bias reporting flyer, hopefully corrected, and pledges to continue working together to support diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to build a stronger Center Region. Jesse?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Elliot.
Okay, Elliot, we're giving you a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Excellent. Motion carries. Continuing on, actions of the executive committee. As indicated in the agenda, the executive director and I received a communication from Harris Township, which was the consensus of their board from the February 14th, 2022 meeting. I want to extend my appreciation to Harris Township for taking that extra step and getting to a consensus and then forwarding that concern on. The two items referenced in Harris's memo are the special meeting of the general forum in December for the single item agenda of a potential increase in the borrowing for Whitehall Road. That meeting was canceled by action of the chair and the executive committee. And the second was the letter to Penn State regarding a vaccination mandate, which was sent out from the executive committee based on the external communication policy. I want to clarify or confirm that we're not looking to rehash the circumstances of those two decisions. Harris feels those circumstances aren't relative. It's not how it works in my world. Circumstances do matter, but we would like the general forum to provide direction on if that is to be. Usually in situations like this, we always look at the first part. Did whoever did what they did they have the authority to do it? And if they did have the authority to do it, do we still want them to have the authority to do it? So the first item references the executive committee's role in the administration of the COG and the general forum. Both actions taken that Harris references were done under that authority. I would open it up at this point to our members, any of our members from Harris that would like to speak to this segment of the discussion. Mr. Grant.
This was not meant to put the executive committee or the administration to full battle mode. That's apparently what happened here. This is very simple. As I looked at this and I saw this, it has nothing to do with whether before. Well, it just seems to me it makes common sense that we have committees. Each committee is assigned to do certain things, and when that committee reaches a conclusion and wants to report back to the general forum on it, and generally it's always in the form of a motion. That committee, it's just a motion, they forward it to the general forum, to the executive committee to forward the general forum. And it seems to me that this would be common sense or common courtesy to forward all motions from committees to the general forum and either have voted up, voted down, or sent back to the committee. So it's not a complicated matter, and that really don't like to try it to the last previous incidents. I just think that it seems to me in the future that if it ever comes up again, that I think it should be that if a committee has a motion or has worked on something that has to make a report to the general forum or call for action general forum, that should go to the executive committee, should be put in the agenda, discussed, voted up, voted down, or sent back. So that's it's simple as that. I'm not saying it was wrong or right, but I just think that that's why we have committees report. And the other issue is I noticed that it almost happened in one other committee I was on, that if there's going to be a directive or a statement or some sort of a stand from the general forum, that it should be discussed at the general forum and forwarded, either voted up, voted down, as we just did with this last one, rather than just assuming that it is for transparency, it needs to be discussed. Simple matter, bring it to the general forum. So that's just a comment I have, that it sort of got out of hand as far as put the executive committee in a position they had to defend themselves. This is what it meant to be. It's meant that I think general procedure is if you have a committee, the committee does something for you, they want to report back to you, it's a form of motion, it should go for a general forum. And I'm assuming it has done almost all before, and it should continue. If you want to make a 5-page letter about it, you're welcome to do that. That is just my comment, that I think that should be a procedure. So that's it.
Very good. Any other comments with regard to this, what we would need is if someone feels that some action is required on this part of the question, we need an actionable motion. If none, we'll move on to the next segment. The next segment is that you need to review any existing policy that was used in making the decisions, again, the circumstances that were involved. In this case, the COG external communication policy was used in the one item. Just as a background, that external communication policy actually grew out of not having committees just send out letters that the general forum hasn't had an opportunity to vet. In this case, it did fall under an exception where the letter did not make it all the way to the general forum for debate. And that was because of various circumstances and stuff. But now is the time to review whether we want any modification to the external communication policy, which was included in the agenda package. And does anybody, Mr. Hart, please?
Yeah, I did want to say something on that one, and I'm referring to the communications thing, and the letter, if you remember, was that they mandate the students get vaccinated before they can come back. So that's a call to action. We are position statement or recommendations for actions that residents, employers, and businesses in the wider center region community should or should not take. And the timing is urgent or non-urgent. So that's where that letter fell. And if I read what we're supposed to do by our communications thing, drafts reviewed by agency directors and executive directors, committee members with a vote by committee to forward to the general forum. At no point in there does it have the executive committee. So that's kind of what we're saying, that we usurped our own policy here. And I think that's pretty clear that if you read our statement on how our exterior communications are to go. So that's really the point that we're trying to make. And it's not that, again, like Bud said, this is just something we have to pay attention to going forward. That's all we're asking. It's good. We pay
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing. Eric, do you have any comments with regard?
What I would say is the version that you have in front of you that you were just referring to, Frank, was revised in October. You look at the top, just below the logo. Because we ran into some discussion, the executive committee did discuss the version that was in place in July relative to the section that you just identified, the calls to action, as well as trying to make very specific exceptions towards the bottom of the page where there are situations that these don't apply. This has been a work in progress for most of last year. It really took us from February to June or July to get to a draft that was first adopted. And then after the letter that you identified about vaccinations, this was revisited again in September, and the revised version is the one that you have in your packet, which specifically addresses the call to action that you noted.
Bruce.
Yes, thank you. My feeling is that if something is urgent, so urgent that it needs to be sent out by the executive committee, then it should be sent out clearly as coming from the executive committee rather than the executive committee speaking for the entire general forum. In the case in point here, if we brought it before the general forum, I would have expressed my disagreement with that and the fact that I did not support that letter. So again, if we're going to bypass the general forum, I don't think the executive committee should speak for the general forum, but should speak for themselves.
That's a fair statement, Bruce. I do believe. The only thing I would condition it on, if you remember the meeting prior to that, there was absolute overwhelming general forum support that a letter be sent of this nature. And I think that influenced who the sender was in this case. But your point is well taken. Laura.
Thank you, Chair, and all who've contributed to the dialogue. So I think that we did follow procedures properly, and I don't think I'd change the reach of the executive power in terms of canceling meetings. I think we talked about how communication is really needed there, maybe, and maybe that was part of the issue with, like, I guess the hurt feelings or something with that cancellation. In terms of the communication, I'll provide an alternate flexing of this communication policy that I wasn't thrilled with the results of, and it gave me the opportunity to look at the policy from a little bit of a different perspective. So I also don't agree that we didn't use it properly, but I don't love some of the parts of the policy. The parts I don't love are the distinctions of routine and non-routine. I felt like that there's probably a lot of variability in how we define that across committees, and it could lead to miscommunications and hurt feelings. And then I also didn't like the distinction of urgent and non-urgent, and the reason for that is the same. That there's differences of that gauge across committees. So the example I'll provide is Capital Committee, thinking it was an urgent issue, provided a letter that they hoped executive would send. And it would related to the connection of Musser Gap. Background on that is the region has purchased the trailhead, the region has purchased Whitehall. We need the connection secured there. We wanted to reach out to President Barron because he was the initiator of a really wonderful project to really preserve that. But now, oh my gosh, he's leaving. It's urgent. We want the message sent. It came to executive and it was stopped in its tracks just because it was not considered urgent by exec. I was on exec on all of these decisions, so I kind of saw it firsthand. I think that when you look at who thinks what is urgent and non-urgent, it can perhaps lead to misunderstanding. So again, I don't think anything was wrong in any of those situations, but I also don't just necessarily think that this is anyone, including myself or Bruce or Harris, just being upset because they, quote, didn't get their way or something to that effect. It's maybe how things are being interpreted. So I would just say, I think that exec would like to continue to work on that communication policy. I would support that. And I do think it's something that we should do. Thanks.
Great. Like most policies, I think you nailed it, Laura. If it lets you do what you want to do, you like it. If it doesn't, you probably don't. The key to the good policy is to try to cover both of those and everything. This is a living policy. I think Bruce brought up a very good point with regard to that. There will be judgments. There has to be judgments at times. When in doubt, my take from the policy was, when in doubt, send it to the general forum. Let them argue it out. Sometimes out here in the real world, it doesn't allow, and judgments get made. I will say that both of those items were unanimous votes of the executive committee. I do think unanimous vote is a high bar, especially at the executive committee. But we're not above trying to do it better. That's the goal, is to try to do it better. And every policy and every plan is perfect until it gets used. And then you find a better way to potentially find a better way to do it. Sometimes there isn't a better way to do it, and you do the best that you can. So, unless there's a specific action to be put forward by the general forum, what I'm hearing is that the executive committee should continue to modify the communication policy as they feel required. Elliot, go ahead.
This issue has come up a number of times before. over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And each time when I've heard it, from whether it was me saying something about it or somebody else, I just noted that should be a note of caution that none of our committees are above all the other committees. And we're all elected officials, and we all were elected to do a certain thing, and we try to do it as well as we can. And if we hear that we're overstepping our bounds, we should just think about it and hopefully come back to where we should be. Now, if that doesn't work, then we got to think that's always worked in the past. And so I think we should continue to try to do that.
Elliot, you had a perfect segue into the next item. Do we need to create a new policy or procedure for this? And, you know, I'm just gonna, I think this very conversation speaks that we have a healthy process, that we're having this discussion. Is there a better way to do it? And we're taking the time and reviewing it. It speaks to a healthy process. But with that said, if someone feels that there needs to be something in writing that says to do that, I'm sure that all the members in the executive committee are open to that. So, anybody wish? Frank, go ahead.
I would like to say, I don't think that this is, I don't think we need to do anything. I think we're fine. I think if we just keep going with the communications thing. What was done here by my colleagues and I in Harris Township was we saw something we thought deviated from our policies and went into a gray area. All we wanted to do was identify it, get it out there so that, again, we can all make sure in the future we do that. I think that's all this was about. I don't think it's about any, let's have a new policy or that. I don't know about my colleagues, but I think they feel the same way I do. We just wanted to bring it to the forum and make sure that everybody understands it. I think it would be remiss in our duties if we didn't bring it forward, that we saw something we thought was outside of the boundaries. I think that's what our point is.
And we did that.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. And as I said earlier, greatly appreciate that we went from candidly a meaningless vote on Whitehall Road to a bigger discussion of a bigger matter. So I greatly appreciate that it flowed through this way, and I appreciate the discussions to try to make us better. So, is there any other following finishing comments on this matter? If not, I'm sure I can speak for my peers on executive that we came, we saw, we heard. Very good. Continuing on, university report, Ms. Young.
Yes, good evening. Not much.
Ms. Young, before you start, there's a rumor on the street that you might have got a little something.
Oh, you just gotta call me out, huh, Rich? Just a little something. Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And appreciate all the feedback from everybody. Not much to report tonight, but good news, just like the community positivity rates, ours are going down. We are looking at the CDC guidance and reviewing that on our masking policy. So we should be coming out with something soon on what we're going to do on campus. So we'll be keeping you abreast of that. But that's it for tonight.
Great. Questions for Sharima? Great. Thank you, Sharima. Is Ms. Brandt on or Mr. Bach? We're not seeing either, so very short school district report. Executive Director report, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the packet tonight, we have a information-filled February activity report, which includes updates on a number of items, including fundraising and a picture of the new tanker that is on its way to replace the one that you just authorized disposal of. Any of the agency directors or myself would be happy to answer any questions if there are any. Otherwise, I will turn the floor back to you, Mr. Chair, as we have two agency directors that would like to give a couple quick presentations.
Any questions for the executive director?
Not particularly a question, interesting observation. On the page that says 537 special study for Colorado, if you read into that paragraph, they call it sewer authority, et cetera, has a significant potential growth. I find that curious with respect to the fact that it's not potential, it is here. The high rises that are downtown have basically been the basis of driving this action. It could be worse. Maybe it could be potentially worse, but right now, we know they're causing that. I think we need to put that in there that this is what's causing more use of the sewer authority.
Very good. Any other questions, comments for the executive director? Hearing or seeing none. Agency director reports. Jared, you go ahead and introduce.
First up, Jim would like to introduce Pam.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Jim May. I'm the planning director for the Center Regional Planning Agency. It's good to see all of you tonight. We're preparing our 2021 annual report, and one of our major accomplishments has been the completion of our climate action and adaptation plan. And one of the things we're trying to do with this plan is to come up with ways to help people, if they want to look at renewable energy, to try to make it as easy as possible. Pam Adams and Nicole Pollock from our office have put together a webpage. Let's Go Solar in the Center Region. And I'm going to ask Pam to jump on and run you through that real quick so you can see what we're trying to do for individuals in the Center Region. So Pam, why don't you hop on and give that presentation?
All right, thank you, Jim. So I'm going to share my screen to sort of just quickly go through a couple of the points of our web page. I just want to point out that we recognize that local planning, zoning, permitting, inspection, those local government processes can have an impact and can help facilitate the expansion of solar energy, which is important to our climate action and adaptation plan. So as Jim said, Nicole and I, we met with stakeholders and we've done a bunch of research to try to determine what we are doing and what we can do better. We did meet with local installers, code, fire, zoning, and planners to build this website. And we basically learned that local government is not being a barrier in our region, but we can improve those efficiencies. So this website was created by Steve Arnold, and again, with input from the stakeholders who also reviewed this. Over 20 stakeholders looked at this as well. So on the home page, I'll just walk you through, there's going to be a what's new section. I'll get to that in a little bit. And then we have steps for going solar, local government initiatives, and resources. So we're trying to keep it simple and straightforward. You can click here or at the bottom here with this link, or up here, and there's a pull down window to get to the 4 steps is how we've outlined it. So if you look at the steps, I'm not going to go through every page, but we do walk through the process to assess your solar potential, how you can prepare before you meet with an installer, and the installer can walk you through these steps as well as what we talk about. Under the permitting page, we have guides for how to fill out the permit and what to not miss. And then there's the installation step. So I'm not going to walk through, but if you get the time, check it out. The page for local government initiatives is really to try to help the community see what we're doing. And we start with what the goal is identified in the plan. And then, as you know, in 2021, both Ferguson Township installed the solar on its roof of its public works building, and the UAJ has installed a 5 megawatt solar array as well as microgrid. So there's information there, as well as the SPPA working group. So this is where we're going to try to be highlighting things that were happening. If you click on the what's new, that's sort of the focus. And we're going to try to keep this moving around and showing different things. We currently have a dashboard that shows our renewable energy development over the last decade, and it shows construction cost as well as the number of projects, and you can zoom in. You can also filter by municipality and look at just what's in College Township, and again, zooming in, then you can click on these links. So I just would recommend that you check it out. Our plan is to share this information with the municipalities and see if they'll put it on their website. We're going to do social media and get the information out there. Two more things I just want to point out is the co-op, the Center County Solar and EV Co-op closed at the end of January. We did surpass our member goal of 100 members. We had 144 actually, which is the largest in the state to date. So we're very excited about that. And we hope it translates into the highest number of installations as well. But the other thing is this local planning and guidance documents. We did create, Nicole and I, working with the zoning planning, we looked at best practices, and this fact sheet is for local governments when they're updating their regulations on some of the best practices to help with regional consistency and improving the solar installation process. So I'll stop sharing. I forgot to mention, and I'll put the link in the side of the chat, but you can get it from our website under the Sustainable Center Region, under the planning agency, or a bit.ly, but I will put that link in. And we're not finished. We know we have to do more to help low and middle income property owners be able to have solar, as well as we want to continue to work on where we can have opportunities with regional consistency, such as with the new code software coming out. We've been working with the code agency to see what opportunities we might have there as well. But again, I'll put the link in. We have a bit.ly link to get to the Go Solar in the center region. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Questions for Pam or general comments? Laura?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Pam, so much for working on this as usual. Thank you for your clarity and presentation. One thing I've been noticing, both as a consumer of energy and following this process, has been that there's probably a large part of the population, especially here in the center region, where we all have Tree City USA designations, where people are just not willing to cut down very large, beautiful shade trees to install solar, and that's good. When I look at our website, I think it's Sustainable Center Region. That's very cool, very catchy. There's a lot of emphasis on solar and the solar power purchase agreement, and that's good. But I wonder if when I did some work with a professor at Penn State, there is a large segment of the population that wants to act but can't because of the trees and won't because of the trees. I'm in that situation. We have a heat pump and we want to do a power purchase buy that's not putting solar on the roof, right? We want to go and get green energy. Are we developing some sort of capacity or linkages for individuals that are in that same boat so we can also participate in driving down that needle? Thank you.
It's a really long answer. It's a really long answer, so I'm not going to give it, but maybe offline we could talk about it. But there's a couple things. For our 15 entities, I think we're walking through this process and I'm involved and I'm learning a lot. And I just learned up in Keene, Keane, New Hampshire, they are working on a power purchase agreement for their residents. And they seem to have a similar utility commission to what we have. It's not being done currently in Pennsylvania, but there's some opportunities. So I'd be happy to talk to you off.
Thanks, Pam.
If people want more, but I've got some ideas.
Great. Thanks, Thank you so much.
Elliot? Muted, sir.
I think we need to watch the line between introducing new items for the agenda and committee reports. I think that the last issue was vital to the whole group, but it should have been part of something on the agenda so everybody could think about it before the meeting and then come and talk about it. So that's just a suggestion for the future. It was an excellent report. I'm glad we had it, but I think there's a better place that we can take action from.
Okay. I'm sure as needed, Pam will make sure we have an action item on the agenda that should we be needed. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I have a short report about emergency management. I'm Sean Kaufman, the Center Region's Emergency Management Coordinator. I just wanted to spend a little time and welcome the new elected officials. I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about a task book that we used to give out at the first meetings of the year. So the new elected officials kind of had an idea of what to expect from the emergency management world, what your responsibilities were, and some of your training requirements that go along with being an elected official. So for those that last year were new and things got hijacked by COVID, this may be new to you as well, but we'll take an opportunity just to give you a little information. I've included the PDF in your agenda packet, so some of the links and information that's included you can go back and reference later. But we used to have a task book that we handed out at the meetings. You know, in the general forum room, I'd had 32 of them and hand them around and everybody could look at it, but I just turned it into a short PowerPoint for your information tonight. So the purpose of the task book was to provide the elected officials with information about the National Incident Management System and the Incident Command System requirements that are part of our emergency management program and our requirements that come down from the federal government to the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Code, Title 35. Each of the municipalities is required to appoint a coordinator, which the Center Region has done as a regional program, and I'm the coordinator. They're required to adopt an emergency operations plan, which we've done regionally and in conjunction with Penn State. And then to maintain an emergency operations center, which we do, again, jointly with Penn State. We've had a regional program since 1999, and which has basically the single coordinator and plan and emergency operations center. So that's a little bit about us. And as we move forward and get the opportunity, I hope we can visit with everybody and go over our program and show you our emergency operations center in the future. Also, you know, a little bit more about the program. Obviously, I'm the full-time coordinator. Supervision is through the fire program. So Steve Baer, the fire director, is my direct report. I get oversight through the Emergency Management Council. We meet every other month. The representatives on the Emergency Management Council are your municipal managers, the COG executive director, the vice chair of COG, which this year is Mr. Barlow, and then a representative from Penn State University. So in addition to those meetings every other month, I also meet then and report out to the Public Safety Committee and get to work with the elected officials on the Public Safety Committee and give regular updates to that group as well. But the reason I'm doing this presentation is, you know, give you a little bit of information about what you should be doing during a time of disaster and some of the trainings that will help you, you know, be more prepared as an elected official, and then kind of, you know, how information should flow. When we do declare a disaster in the Center Region, which fortunately is not very often, we do that regionally through the COG chair, or in the absence of the COG chair, the COG vice chair, and we declare those emergencies. And then our policies and policies from the state code require us to ratify that through the general forum. So all 32 elected officials get an opportunity to discuss any disaster declarations that we have. And we did one over COVID in 2020 that was declared and then ratified, and then amended and ratified again when there were some changes made. But here's where the kind of rubber meets the road. When we're talking about the elected officials, what do we want you to do during a disaster or major emergency? And I like to say the concept is family first, okay? Whether you have a family living with you or not, you need to take care of yourselves and your family first. Assure your safety during any kind of emergency, whatever it might be, and activate your family emergency plan. So obviously, if you have a large family, you know, you need to be more prepared and have a lot of other items. Some of you may have pets and things like that you need to take care of. But the gist of this is the first thing I want you to do as elected officials is take care of yourselves and make sure you're taking care of your family. The information about emergency preparedness and stuff, you can get to that through the website, through the COG website. Go to the emergency management page, and we have a page on there called Center Region Ready, and it links you up to a lot of the Ready campaign, which talks about, you know, how to prepare yourselves and your family, be ready for a disaster. But when we move on with, and we're talking about the general elected officials, you know, during the disaster, once you've taken care of your family, we want the 32 elected officials that are in the COG not to bombard the Emergency Operations Center with phone calls. So we want your communication to occur with your managers. So if you have information about what's going on in the area that you live in, we want you to provide that information to your managers. So if you know of things like roads being closed or power outages or communication outages, report those kind of things to your manager because our system wouldn't allow for all 32 elected officials to be calling into myself or the Emergency Operations Center and make that efficient. So a more efficient way in our plan is to reach out to your managers and provide that information. With that being said, I don't want you all out patrolling your townships and looking for stuff because that can be dangerous during the disaster as well. But when I say about reporting conditions, those are things that you can see from your home or that are, you know, right in your neighborhood, things that are impacting the area that you live in or work in that current time. So I want you then to just monitor situations, provide updates as needed to your managers, participate in any briefings or information that we put out. So if we put together a Center Region information briefing, we'd like you to participate in those, and we'll make sure that everybody's aware if those do occur. And then obviously, as part of the declaration, we would need you to meet within 7 days to ratify the declaration as needed. So those are some things as a general elected official that you'd be doing. The chair and chair have a responsibility in COG, and so as you rotate through those positions, you get the opportunity to work directly with me and the Emergency Management Council in terms of declaring an emergency. And in the absence of the chair, we work through with the vice chair to sign declarations and then provide those situational reports that come out of our Emergency Operations Center to the rest of the elected officials. And then from the elected officials, if you have communications with residents and things like that to help us, you know, kind of get the word out. And that's what we did most recently during COVID. We had regular updates with our emergency operations staff, and then that information that came out of those meetings was disseminated across to elected officials through the managers. So that's kind of the way the process works, and we hope that in, you know, any disaster or major emergency that's kind of the information flow that we have going on. The next step is, as an elected official, is there's some requirements that came down through Homeland Security after 9/11. President Bush came up with the Presidential Directive number 5, which basically just directed Homeland Security to develop a system that was consistent nationwide at the federal, state, and local levels so that everybody kind of worked and prepared the same for a disaster, regardless of the size or complexity. And that's called the National Incident Management System, and we use that to kind of direct people to what trainings are needed. So this particular slide, like I said, is available in your packet. I'm not going to go through it in a lot of detail, but the National Incident Management System has a list of training opportunities, and there's 2 specific ones. They're real basic level trainings that elected officials are asked to take. And when I say that, asked to take, there's not a, I call NIMS police out there looking for you to see if you've done them, okay? We've reassured through resolution years ago that we're a NIMS compliant community, and so by providing you with the opportunity to take these trainings, it gives you that, you know, kind of compliance. Years ago, we had to do a lot of checks in the box and collect certificates. The federal government realized that was too hard to do, so we don't do that anymore. Basically, I affirm each year that we are working toward our plans to be NIMS compliant, and by providing you with this information, we can do that. But the federal government has a FEMA site with independent study on the 2 training courses that we're asking you to take or are available online through their independent study program. Those two courses are NIMS 700, which is an introduction to the National Incident Management System, and then ICS 100C, which is the introduction to the Incident Command System. In both those cases, it's just basic information of how we work during a disaster and how field users like the fire department, police departments, emergency medical technicians, public works would work together during an incident. Once you start moving up through the program, then there's some other trainings that are recommended but not required. And Steve and I are actually teaching today. We were at this class teaching it, and tomorrow and Wednesday, the Incident Command 300 level, which is more of advanced training. And we have several people from the Center region that are in that program today, taking that 3-day course. So there's opportunities available locally to take the more advanced training. Not that you have to, but those things are available to you. But the two that we ask the elected officials to do are the online training, the NIMS 700 and the ICS 100. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. I'm not going to stand between you and the end of the meeting any longer. But the last slide that's in your handout is information to get a hold of me. So obviously you may have a lot of questions. Feel free to send me an email. That's the best way to communicate, or if you need to, call by phone. And we'll try to work through the information. I'll guide you through the websites and you know, stuff that's important and other things that you know, maybe aren't as important to you as an elected official. We try to keep it as simple as possible, but we want to try to be as compliant as we can too with the mandates that come down from the federal government or the Commonwealth. So I'll end my screen share. Like I said, you might have a lot of questions, but I'd like to kind of postpone them to an email, but I'll take anything that you burning right now.
Anything for the good of the cause? Questions for Sean? Not seeing any or hearing any. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Sean. He's a wealth of information. At this point, we're going to circle back to our State College Area School District report. Mr. Buck has joined us. Mr. Buck, do you have anything for the general forum?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Frank. I just was able to speak with Ms. Brandt. She was unable to make the meeting, and so I was able to jump in just now. Just 3 items here. So the district has finalized a request for proposals for the elementary school boundary study. I spoke on this the last time I was here. That RFP has either just gone out or is just about to go out. As I said previously, that consultant may be reaching out to the Center Region Planning Agency for updated information on regional growth patterns. Parents and community members should note that the boundaries may not actually be reset until 2023. It may be 2024 until that's actually finished. The State College Area School District's health and safety plan may be updated as of March 28th. As many of you may know, there may be, and I stress, may be, a mask optional policy that goes into effect on the 28th. There are different factors weighing into whether or not that happens. Based on our last board discussion, issues related to the vaccination or the lack of vaccination for children under 5, that our special ed population needs special accommodations. And we just want to make sure that the district is playing a constructive part in mitigating health circumstances for immunocompromised families. We want to take all those into account before finalizing anything. There will be a special work session the week of March 14th, where we will be dealing with the health and safety plan in particular. The last item I want to address comes in light of an altercation that happened in early February and the use of racist and anti-Semitic symbols that are part and parcel of the context of that altercation. I would direct members of the community, members of the COG, to a statement by Dr. Bob O'Donnell, the superintendent, regarding the district's response, in particular, our commitment to calling all uses of anti-Semitic and racist language unacceptable, that the district itself has no role in the prosecution of any minor, and that it is the district's sacred trust to take care of all children. We would ask that everyone play a constructive role in building community as best they can, that they care for our kids, and that they respect the privacy of individual children and families. That is my brief report. If anyone has any questions, I can do my best to answer them. And if I can't, direct you to someone who can.
Great. Questions for Mr. Buck? Seeing or hearing none. Peter, thank you very much for joining us and sharing those thoughts. Continuing on, committee reports, executive committee, Mr. Barlow.
There's almost nothing to report that you have not seen in this meeting, except that we held an executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesse. Finance committee, Mr. Trevino.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The agenda has a very accurate summary of the different discussion items that the committee dealt with during our meeting. There's one item I will elaborate on just briefly. The updating the COG budget process. Mr. Vigilone summarized budget process steps throughout the year, starting now in January through the whole budget process, and asked that the municipal finance directors should review this plan and provide feedback to Joe before it goes out for the municipality boards to review. Now, included in our discussion was the need to decide what will go into the COG capital improvement plan, the CIP, versus the program plan, because there had been recommendations that new program issues like hiring additional personnel perhaps should be considered as part of a CIP, which several municipalities do with those incidences. We're still in discussion about this, so we'll have another report probably, and if we need to make a recommendation for change, well, the whole process will be sent to the executive committee anyway. So you'll hear about that later. Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Dan. Questions for Mr. Trevino? Excellent. Human resources, Mr. Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a robust but relatively brief meeting on, I believe it was February 2nd, where we discussed, or we approved the new finance administration positions job description, and we also revised the existing finance assistant positions job description, and we prioritized our work tasks for the coming year. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Strauss? Very good. Parks Capital did not meet. Public safety, Mr. Takak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The summary provided in our sheet does a nice job of summarizing our brief meeting, but I wanted to elaborate just a little bit on the last item there. During Sean Kaufman's report, we began talking about several of the very significant challenges that EMS is facing around funding and reimbursement, around recruitment and retention, particularly of paramedics, as well as regional challenges that are related to coverage areas and mutual aid and those kind of things. As part of that conversation, it became clear that addressing and resolving many of these issues is going to require legislative fixes beyond our level and really at the county and the state level. So as many of you know or have heard, the Seven Mountains EMS Council is hosting a legislative breakfast next Thursday, March 10th. And I believe all or everyone here has been invited to participate in that breakfast. Unfortunately, many of these events have not been particularly well attended, despite the urgency and importance of the issues. So therefore, in light of the COG's financial support of this breakfast, we actually approved $1,500 in the current budget to support this legislative breakfast. The committee felt it was appropriate for the Public Safety Committee to write a brief invitation to our local, state, and county elected officials to supplement the invitation that they had already received from the council, really to underscore the importance of local EMS services to the people and communities that we serve here in the center region. So in consultation with the executive director and staff, those invitations were sent out, I believe, last week, and we hope it will result in better attendance than has heretofore been the case. So I'll happily answer any questions around.
Questions for Mr. Takat?
Yes, Mr.
Might I
Takat.
ask that invitation be resent? I remember seeing it, but it went the wrong way.
I'm speaking, the invitation from us went directly to the county commissioners and to our state elected officials. The invitation that came from you came from the Seven Mountains EMS Council. I will gladly reach out to them and ask that they resend that to all of the COG elected officials.
Great. Question, any other questions for Mr. Takat? As an aside, those invitations were reviewed under the external communications policy.
I was going to mention that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Continuing on, Facilities Committee, Ms. Hartle.
Yes, good evening. I do not have anything to add other than what's in the, what we covered in the agenda with the fire lease and also with what is in the summary at the, under our review. It's very well covered. It was a short but effective meeting.
Excellent. Thanks, Patty. You got a good chair this year. Any questions for Ms. Hartle? Seeing or hearing none. Land use and community infrastructure, Mr. Haymeister.
The agenda item adequately discusses what we shared, and we also have a great group chair this year.
Excellent. Any questions for said chair? Seeing or hearing none. Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, Ms. Whitman.
Great. Well, I will refrain from any editorial comments on the current chair of this committee, but however, you can draw your own conclusions. I do want to elaborate on one item, and that is about Soul Smart, which Pam Adams mentioned, I believe, also in her report. So Soul Smart is a U.S. Department of Energy program that recognizes cities, counties, regional organizations such as ourselves and municipalities for making it faster, easier, and more affordable to go solar. I want you all to know that COG is applying for a silver Soul Smart designation. For the region to become gold, to receive a gold designation, all of the municipalities in COG will have to achieve a Soul Smart designation. So I throw down the gauntlet to all of you to achieve that. But great work that we've done so far. Thanks. That's it.
Questions for Ms. Whitman? Seeing or hearing none. Parks and Recreation Government Special Committee, Ms. Madison. She's still with us. She is on. I still see her, but she might have gone to book club. Parks and Rec Governance Special Committee had its organizational meeting February 9th. We began this figuring out how we're going to eat this elephant, and we established an initial plan, and we'll continue on. Our first piece will be education at our first meeting, in our first regular meeting, which will be in March. Any questions for that item? Seeing or hearing none, other business, matters of record, anything that staff wants to bring to General Forum's attention? Do I see Elliot? Yes, Elliot, I see your hand now.
If you're looking at my background there, I wanted to show it's a demonstration of how dangerous snow squalls are. This was a squall that came through last Saturday, and the time lapse there runs about 15 minutes, but the disappearing of a mountain a mile away happens in about 10 seconds. And so when those warnings are issued, it's like driving into a wall that can capture you and kill you if you don't pay attention. And that's why we have chain reaction accidents of those. The visibility just goes to absolute zero when these things hit, which is happening right there in that video.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Elliot. Again, matter of record, anything staff wishes to bring to General Forum's attention?
There's several important items there, but if you take a moment and read through them and let me know if you have any questions, I won't read them to you. Thank you.
Very good. Any questions on any of the matters of record? Seeing or hearing none, staff has included our calendar, helpful reference links, and the listing of all the enclosures that were in this evening's agenda. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the cause? Hearing nor seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have multiple motions. Thank you all. Take care. See you again soon.
Recording stopped.